Why did Rahul Gandhi make a rather sarcastic reference to Sri Narendra Modi's claim to be God's deputy or a special messenger from God or a man with a special mission from God in the course of his parliamentary speech? Surely, this is a question that almost every Indian who listened to the speech in the very specific context in which the speech was delivered would be asking within himself or herself. Because when a significant speech like that is made, it is obvious that every detail of it is planned well in advance. Nothing is spoken inadvertently, uh, just for the sake of saying something, nor is such a speech made to please those in the gallery. Every issue raised, every word uttered, every illustration used is very carefully planned. And therefore, it's quite reasonable to assume that when Rahul Gandhi made a reference to Modi's claim to be of God, not of biological birth, but a person of divine descent or divine origin, surely there is a very substantial concern at the back of it. You know that not everything can be stated in the course of a speech in which so much had to be crammed anyway. Therefore, he did not go into the details of what perhaps he would have said otherwise if time had permitted. Now, when a speech of national significance is made and it is telecast live through the length and breadth of India, bringing it home to every Indian, it also implies that citizens have the freedom to examine, to analyze, to critique, to dissect, to decode whatever the speaker said. Now, in this exercise, citizens have an advantage and a disadvantage. The disadvantage is the advantage. Therefore, let me state the disadvantage first. As citizens, we only sit in our houses in front of our television sets and hear the speech made by whether it is Rahul Gandhi or Narendra Modi or any of the other speakers. Therefore, we are in no position to enter into their minds and find out what exactly was the true intention behind a particular point made and the many elaborate concerns that envelop every point made. In other words, as people who merely see Rahul speak or hear his words, we are in no position to understand his full motive and the full range of his thematic considerations. This is a disadvantage. Why do I say that it is an advantage also? It's an advantage because this very non-availability of the full intent and scope of a statement leaves the listeners free to undertake their own reflections, investigations, etc. Now, even otherwise, it is a general convention respected throughout the world that when a person of national significance makes a public statement, he accords to all his listeners the freedom to understand and interpret his ideas and his words as they are able to. No person in the public domain can insist that his statements must be understood only as he intended. because such a claim is untenable, impractical. And at any rate, such a claim suppresses the freedom of thought, freedom of inquiry that citizens are guaranteed under the Constitution of India. My background is literature, and in literary criticism, it is a well recognized fact all over the world that after the author finishes his text, gives it to the publisher, and it comes to the market as a printed book, he has no control over the text. Then it is entirely up to the critics to interpret, to assess, to tell the public at large what the meaning is, what the nuances are, etc. So that freedom is basic to our intellectual culture. And therefore, in what I'm going to say in this video, I'm also going to avail myself of this freedom. Rahul Gandhi, of course, is free to correct me if I have gone astray in interpreting what he said. And I shall be happy to correct myself forthwith. Okay, now why did he make a rather sarcastic reference to this very unusual claim made by the Prime Minister? And the claim was made by the Prime Minister in a very deliberate manner so as to make it reach citizens all over the country. The claim was, or the revelation was made to a select group of journalists who were invited to participate in this very carefully choreographed media event, interaction with the media fraternity by the Prime Minister. Pardon me. Now, Rahul is raising a very important issue in political science, as well as the philosophy of governance. That is the issue of power. Power. Now, we know that where 2 or 3 people come together, power begins to be at work. And the degree of power increases even as the size of the people involved increases. For example, the power enjoyed by the Prime Minister of a country of 100,000 people is nothing compared to the power that the Prime Minister of a country of 1.4 billion people can command. In fact, today our Prime Minister commands a lot of attention, respect, and weight in the international domain, largely because of our population. Not entirely, but largely because of our population. He is aware of it because every now and then, when he tries to remind people of his merit or the importance of the office that he holds, he always refers to the 140 crore people that he is looking after. And he has every right to make such a statement because it's a factual statement which nobody can contradict. The point I'm making is still valid, that there's a correlation between the size of the population that he looks after and the extent of power that is attached to the office that he holds. So, quite obviously, both Rahul Gandhi and Narendra Modi are raising the question of power. But both are doing in their own ways, and that's the most interesting thing for us to see. It is very fascinating to become aware of it and to undertake our own reflections on this. That's the reason why I'm bringing this to your notice. So, Narendra Modi and Rahul Gandhi are both dealing with the issue of power, which is the most central issue in politics. You cannot remove power from politics. If you remove power from politics, nothing will be left. Just as you can't remove money from religion, and if you remove money from religion, nothing will be left, not even the smell of it. So, power is actually extremely important. And every person in authority, every person who occupies an important position or a powerful office will try his level best to increase the extent and intensity of his power. Extent means the range. How many aspects of national life can my power, touch, and control. The genius of power, I don't have to say this to you, the genius of power is largely found in its capacity to control everything about the life of a nation. Now, if a person is less ambitious in the exercise of power, he will try to manage with controlling fewer and fewer aspects of national life and the life of the people. That's precisely what Henry David Thoreau meant when he said, less government, minimum government, maximum governance. That is to say, the people who comprise the government, at the apex of which sits the Prime Minister, they should reduce the range and reach of their control effect on the life of the people and allow them to take care of themselves more and more. They should be able to think and decide for themselves, and the government should play only a facilitating role. On the other hand, if you have a person who is too conscious of his power and authority at the helm of affairs, he would think that it is the divine mandate given to him to control every bit of the life of the citizens and every facet of national life. Nothing can stir, and nothing should move without his permission, and everything should happen only according to his will and his dictates. That is how a democratic leader gravitates towards or moves towards becoming a dictator, even without wanting to be so. Maybe he's even unaware of it, but de facto, he becomes a dictator because maybe out of good intentions, maybe because he has excessive faith in his own supernatural abilities to do a good job. He believes that it is his duty to bring more and more aspects of the life of the people under his control, and that will be beneficial for them. And therefore, good governance means maximizing the power of the CEO of the country, which is the Prime Minister. So when Narendra Modi made the claim that he is not a person of biological origin, biological birth, but that he has come from God with a special mission to India, and that he is functioning as per the guidance of the Paramatma, he was actually very clearly trying to do two things. One, intensify his power, make it of the highest possible order. Everybody agrees that the highest power is God. That's why we say that God is almighty. In other words, there is none that compares with God in terms of power. God is almighty. So if a person comes to you as your leader, who is specially commissioned by God, it stands to reason that he is imbued with God's power, and therefore he can legitimately claim absolute power. So by claiming oneself to be commissioned and sent by God, the person who makes that claim is staking a claim on absolute power. It is a religious strategy for absolutizing one's power. It is so very obvious it does not have to be explained in detail. But I am taking a little time over it just in case there is a small area of uncertainty left in some quarter or the other. It is important that we cultivate clarity on these issues. So, and this is nothing new. For example, English monarchy even today claims that kings are God's deputies anointed on the earth, placed to rule the people on behalf of God, and therefore they are entitled to absolute power, and citizens have no right to question them. Of course, right now the situation has changed, but before the parliament seized sovereign power from the monarch, the will of the king was absolute, and there was no way it could be questioned. Questioning the will of the king was treason, and the person doing it could be executed, killed. Now, that's a measure of the absoluteness of the power claimed by the monarch when he claims to be governing the people as God's representative, God's deputy. So clearly, such a claim is meant to absolutize one's power. The second is reach. So power has two aspects. One is the degree of power, and here the tendency to absolutize the power. The second is reach. You may have absolute power over one or two or even 20 aspects of life, but that's not enough. You won't have absolute power over every aspect of life. There also the claim that you are God's deputy or God's special messenger or special appointee helps a great deal. God is entitled to unlimited control. He can influence or make claims on every aspect of your life, and therefore God's representative has exactly the same claim. So in two respects, power is absolutized, that is in terms of the degree of power and in terms of the range of power. So this is actually the claim. And it is obvious that Rahul understood it perfectly well. That is the reason why he brings a touch of sarcasm, a little bit of ridicule into the reference that he makes. Now, what is the problem when power is absolutized in this manner? The problem is such a power becomes ipso facto, that is, by that very fact, becomes immune to accountability. He does not have to hold himself accountable to anyone. He does not have to answer a question. No one can ask him a question because he is functioning under absolute authority. And the very definition of absolute authority is authority that cannot be questioned. Now, Rahul realizes that this is a terrible danger for democracy, because democracy is a form of government, a governmental culture in which accountability is supreme. The difference between democracy and dictatorship is that democracy lives or falls by accountability, whereas dictatorship thrives on lack of accountability, and therefore the absolutization of power. Now, there are two further issues about power that Rahul, I am sure, was aware of. One is the nature of power, and the other is the purpose of power. Now, as far as the nature of power, whatever I have said so far applies here also. To make it a little clearer, let me give an explanation. There are three sources of power that we can identify from history. One is power derived from the will of the people, that's democracy. During election time, we go and vote, we vote our representatives, and these representatives together constitute the ruling elite, and within the ruling elite there exists the office of the Prime Minister and various other subordinate offices. So ultimately, it's the sovereign will of the people that constitutes the nucleus of, or the matrix of, the power that the Prime Minister exercises. So the will of the people as a source of power. The second source of power is the power of the genius of a nation. The power of the genius of a nation. For example, India as a nation. That's where nationalism comes. Every nation in the world is a unique, distinct, organic entity. It has got its own native power. The question is, where is that power residing? Where is it invested? Who has the right to exercise that power? Now, in a democratic context, you would say that this is again tantamount to the people's power, and therefore, whoever the people authorize and whoever are accountable to the people must exercise the power of the genius of a nation. But in a more dictatorial context, that genius will be embodied only in one person. He alone knows what is good for the country. Others simply have the very special privilege of obeying or marching according to the orders issued by the man of genius. So the genius of the people is embodied in this man of genius who is non-pareil, who is unrivaled by any other citizen claiming to be like him or anywhere near him is actually at risk of inviting the charge of treason, insulting the very majesty of India, because the majesty of India is embodied in only one person. And that is why, from such a perspective, tolerating rivals is simply not a possibility. When a person comes to believing that he alone embodies the genius of a nation, he has to be intolerant of any competition, because if he doesn't stifle competition, if he doesn't prevent somebody else from unseating him, he feels that he has failed the country, because the best for the country in terms of embodying and articulating its genius as a nation is himself. And anyone else who wants to take his position is an enemy of the country, and it is duty to protect the country against her enemy. And therefore, he has a sacred duty to be intolerant of dissent, competition, rivalry, etc. Now, this is a very, very serious problem. I'm dealing with it in a brief manner for want of time. The third source of authority is the will of God. First, I said, is will of the people. Second, the genius of the nation. Third is the will of God. Now, as far as the will of God is concerned, we have already seen that it is a polar opposite, it's the exact opposite to the will of the people. The will of the people can be ascertained through periodic elections, whereas the will of God, once articulated, is articulated forever, because God is consistent. He cannot say that, in 2014, Mr. Modi is God's representative, and in 2024, somebody else is my representative. God is obliged to be consistent. God doesn't change and chop. And therefore, the will of God is more permanent. I would say, I can't say more permanent, the will of God is permanent, unchanging. Therefore, when a person invokes the will of God, he is not only absolutizing his authority, his power, he is also making it permanent, forever. God's will is forever, it cannot change. Now, all these things were at the back of Rahul Gandhi's thinking when he made a sarcastic reference. Now, sarcasm is a very brief is a technique by which, very briefly, in a very, very a quick fashion, sharp and quick fashion, you can debunk the claim made by somebody. When you are sarcastic about a claim made, you are debunking it. So, Rahul Gandhi is saying that this kind of claim made by the Prime Minister cannot agree with, cannot harmonize with, cannot be accommodated within the framework of democracy at all. We are now standing and speaking in the parliament. I'm thinking of Rahul Gandhi, and not I. I'm not a member of the parliament. So we are now sitting and looking at it, sitting in the Parliament of India. Parliament is the temple of India's democracy. How can a democratic form of government accommodate claims such as this? Hence the context of sarcasm. Now, there's another issue. There's another issue concerning the idea of God and politics that Rahul Gandhi certainly had in mind. But I'm not going to include that idea in this presentation. I'll deal with it in the next video, wherein I take up the reference that Rahul Gandhi made to Hindutva and Hinduism, and his very frontal statement that Hinduism is Hindutva is a contradiction of Hinduism, a statement which is now being very deliberately distorted and misused in order to incite people against Rahul Gandhi, to create some kind of communal animosity towards him. And it's very strange that after having used majoritarian communalism for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years to turn Hindus against Muslims and Christians. Now the same thing is happening within the Hindu community. A contestation or a debate is developing within the Hindu community as to who represents the real Sanatan Hindu faith. Is it represented more truthfully by the Hindutva camp, which politically sponsors Lord Ram and prefers Lord Ram to all other deities among the 33 crore gods and goddesses? Or is it better represented by the vision of Rahul Gandhi, who has his own idea of Hinduism, which is very similar to and perhaps is directly influenced by the idea of Hinduism that the Mahatma, the father of the nation, propounded and practiced, not only spoke about, he actually practiced it. When he said that because I am a true Hindu, I can also be a true Muslim, a true Christian, a true Sikh, a true Baudh, so on and so forth. So that idea of Hinduism was precisely what Rahul Gandhi presented through his maiden speech as a leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha of our 18th Parliament. But that's a subject for another day. In this context, in the present video, my focus was entirely on just one concept, but this concept is right at the heart of all political processes. You cannot discuss politics without discussing power, which is like to the human body, breath. Power is the breath of the body of politics. Therefore, we must have very, very clear ideas about what constitutes power, how can power be healthily exercised, what are the pitfalls in the deployment of power, what happens, what are the ways by which power is absolutized, what will happen when power is absolutized, can democracy and the absolutization of power go hand in hand? These are questions of tremendous practical significance for the citizens of India. And that's the reason I'm pretty sure, absolutely sure, why Rahul raised this issue in the course of his maiden speech as leader of the opposition in the parliament. So it is right and proper that we on our part also reflect on this. And these opportunities are also beneficial in the sense that it enables us to cultivate clarity regarding critically central concepts. Unless and until concepts are debated, we'll never attain clarity about them. For example, I'm sure that many of the things I included in this video existed in the minds of every one of my viewers, but they existed in a very vague and unconnected manner. All that I'm trying to do is to connect your own insights, your own thoughts, and string them together and make them cogent so that you're able to think more clearly and understand the realities that are playing out in front of you in a much better fashion, which contributes to your empowerment as citizens to deal with the public life which you have to deal with anyway. That equips you to be more effective in being citizens of India. And that's a very limited goal that I have. Incomprehension or lack of understanding or languishing in a very vague and nebulous state is not good for anyone. So let's attain clarity, and that's possible only when we put our heads together without any bias, without any partisan loyalties, with the courage to look reality in the face and the patience in the soul or the strength in the mind to pursue ideas to their logical conclusion, and which is what we are trying to cultivate through this YouTube Sangamam. I want to thank each one of you for participating in this process. And once again I say, I'm greatly encouraged by the very thoughtful, insightful responses I get from the viewers. I cherish, I value each of the words that you write to me, and they constitute my continuing schooling. I learn a lot from your responses, and I conclude by wishing all of you a very meaningful day. Thank you.